It is time for the show. I tell that to every member of my staff. It doesn't matter how you feel. You could be hungover, you could be facing eviction. Your girlfriend could be home in bed with the neighbor. None of that has anything to do with the first guest who walked through that door, who chose this restaurant instead of 10,000 others. How do we make that person feel? That's the essence of hospitality. And when you've spent a good portion of your life caged up like a monkey, eating food marked not for human consumption, you'll be a little extra attuned to how people feel. There are profound consequences of the mandatory minimum which have impacted mass incarceration in the U.S. today. There are over 1.4 million people currently in our American prison system. Half of those are locked up for nonviolent offenses. 47% of those are locked up for nonviolent drug offenses. The recidivism rate for these drug offenders is alarmingly high, with studies indicating that 75% will be reincarcerated within 5 years of release. This is Johnny Gargano's story, written by Johnny Gargano. I'll never forget the day of my sentencing, worst judge in the Southern District. When that motherfucker said 240 months, I lifted my hands. 20 years for a first-time offender. I looked at my public defender and she just shrugs. I look at my prosecutor and she says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Gargano. It's the law." She wasn't sorry. Before any of this, Johnny Gargano was a really good person. I truly believe that. Then, one afternoon, I'm taking a nap on the couch and there's a knock on the door. It's the FedEx guy with a package from my health insurance company. It says that my application for coverage has been denied. Now, there were only 6 reasons you could be denied. The first 5 were crazy bugs in Africa. I'd never been to Africa a day in my life. That left the 6th. HIV positive. This was 1997. There were no miracle drugs back then. I thought 100% that I was gonna die. I didn't know how it was gonna happen, but I knew it wasn't gonna be pretty. 3 months later, I'm out at a club with a friend. He pulls out a key and says, "Sniff this." Now, I'd never done a drug, not even weed. Not even once. One sniff. That's all it took. Meth makes you feel invincible, but it wasn't cheap like today. And when you really want something but you can't afford it, there's only one option. First, I was just selling to stay high. My life of crime came to an end in room 911 of the Philadelphia Los Hotel. The first place they brought me was MCC in New York. When they closed the door of that cell, sitting in the middle of the floor was 2 sheets and a blanket. I didn't have the meth anymore. It was just me, those sheets, and that mess. I spent all my time imagining what it was going to be like to die in prison. I thought, this is it. You know, I didn't tell a soul about my diagnosis. I didn't even talk about it with a phlebotomist who checked my blood. One evening, we're in there alone, and I finally got the courage to ask him, "What do you think? Do you think I'll ever make it out of here alive?" He said, "With the new drugs now, you'll live longer than the rest of these clowns." It was my first glimpse of hope, but it came too late. When you're in prison, you're in a coma. You're not making new memories. You might as well be dead. There's 2.2 million people in our American prison system. A lot of them are in the same boat as me, victims of the mandatory minimum passed by Congress in 1986. It's the reason hundreds of thousands of nonviolent people, mostly black and brown, are currently rotting in prison. April 2014, Obama announced a clemency program. Every federal inmate could apply for a presidential pardon. There were over 200,000 federal inmates. I found a jailhouse lawyer named Dino and we got to work. We finished that application in record time. I included friends and family's letters who knew me before the meth. Then I included one final letter. I appealed to the man himself. I told my entire story and then I sent it off. I knew there wasn't much of a chance. August 3rd, 2016, there was a heat that took the breath out of you. I was sitting there when I heard this jive turkey redneck voice over the intercom asking me to report to the warden's office at 12:30. It sounded like I was in trouble. As soon as I walked in those doors, the phone started ringing. The warden told me to pick it up. "Is this Mr. Gargano?" I'm like, "Yeah." And the voice is like, "We're calling to let you know that President Obama signed your petition. You're going home in 4 days." I went completely numb. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout. There was a fucking 4th of July party going on in my heart. 12 years of incarceration. The HIV medication had decayed my bones so badly, I could barely walk. Someone from the Clemency Initiative escorted me to a halfway house in the Bronx. So many rules that it was nearly impossible to get a full-time job. But I tried. I sent out application to restaurant after restaurant. I'd see the same help wanted ads in the newspaper. But the moment they found out about my record, they didn't want the help from me. It was another inmate that suggested I met with Iris. She's a case manager at Mount Sinai Hospital. She got me connected to this job training program, and in this program, they teach you to be upfront about your history. Tell them before they asked. I had a whole speech memorized. I scheduled 6 different interviews, and 6 different times I couldn't go in. But the seventh I made myself do it. I walked in those doors. The manager that day was Raven Peters. I started my spiel. "My name is Johnny Gargano, and before we begin, I want you to know that there is a 15-year gap on my resume. This is why." He didn't let me finish. He said, "John, I only care about 2 things here. How we treat our guests and how you make them feel." I was supposed to die of AIDS in prison. That was supposed to be my legacy. People counted me out. A lot of people counted this restaurant out too. 20 years ago when we opened, Madonna was here. The James Beard Award, this star, that star. Then the pandemic came. We were supposed to die. But look at us now, setting record after record, month over month. I wasn't the only one to do it. It was my whole team, but it's my responsibility. In prison, there was a pill cart. They'd wheel it around at 5 p.m. and shout, "Pill line!" And everyone would get in line for their pills. I wouldn't do it. I told the warden, I would rather die. Either I keep my pills in my locker or I'm not taking them. It's been an obsession my whole life to keep the secret. I sent a draft of this story out to my boss just to let them know what was coming, and since then it's been nothing but texts. "We love you, John. We care about you." I guess that it was a much bigger deal to me than it was to everyone else.